She spent years harassing me about my past, obsessed with a woman I hadn't seen in a decade. She was so convinced I was still in love with my ex that she made our marriage a living hell, until her paranoia finally drove me to do exactly what she feared. I work as a high school history teacher. My life is dedicated to understanding the past, but I also know that the past is meant to be studied, learned from, and then left behind. You can't live in it. But for my wife, Clara, my past wasn't a closed book. It was a crime scene she investigated every single day. Specifically, she was obsessed with Sophie, the woman I had dated for 3 years in my early 20s, long before I even knew Clara existed. When Clara and I first met, I was honest with her. I told her about my life, my previous relationships, and how they had shaped me. I thought honesty was the foundation of trust. I didn't realize that for someone with a retroactive jealousy disorder, honesty is just providing ammunition for future interrogations. It started with small, innocent questions. We'd be watching a movie, and Clara would ask, "Did Sophie like this kind of film? Did you take her to this cinema?" I'd answer truthfully, thinking it was just curiosity. But the questions never stopped. They became more pointed, more invasive, and more frequent. "Why do you still have this book? Did she give it to you? Do you keep it because it reminds you of her? You sighed just now. Were you thinking about your life with her? I saw you liked a photo of a sunset. Is that because you and Sophie once saw a sunset together in Italy?" It was exhausting. I felt like I was being haunted by a ghost that Clara was constantly summoning into our living room. I hadn't spoken to Sophie in 10 years. I didn't follow her on social media. I didn't even know what city she lived in. But in Clara's mind, Sophie was a constant, shimmering rival that I was secretly mourning every hour of the day. I tried everything to reassure her. I burned old photos. I gave away mementos. I changed the way I spoke, the places I visited, and even the music I listened to, just to avoid triggering a Sophie episode. But you can't win an argument against a fantasy. The more I tried to prove my love for Clara, the more she became convinced that my efforts were just a cover for my lingering feelings for my ex. Our home became a courtroom. Every evening was an interrogation. Clara would spend hours scrolling through my old digital footprints from 2012, finding a comment I made on a photo or a song I shared, and demanding a full explanation of my emotional state at that exact moment. "I'm not jealous, Mark," she would say, her voice trembling with a terrifying mix of anger and insecurity. "I just want the truth. I just want to know that I'm not your second choice. I want to know that you don't look at me and wish I was her. Clara, I love you," I would say for the 1000th time. "I chose you. I married you. Sophie is a memory from another life. She doesn't exist to me anymore. Then why are you getting so defensive?" she would snap. "If you didn't care, you wouldn't be so upset that I'm asking." It was a trap. If I stayed calm, I was cold and hiding something. If I got angry, I was reacting because she hit a nerve. There was no exit. I began to feel a profound sense of injustice. I was being punished for a life I lived before I met her. I was being treated like a cheater, even though I was the most faithful man I knew. The atmosphere in our house became toxic. I stopped feeling like a husband and started feeling like a suspect under 24-hour surveillance. I'd be careful with my facial expressions, careful with my phone, careful with my very thoughts. But the more I withdrew to protect myself, the more Clara viewed my silence as proof of my secret pining for the past. The breaking point came in the spring of 2026. I had received a small promotion at school, and I wanted to celebrate. I took Clara to a beautiful new restaurant. For the first 30 minutes, it was perfect. We were laughing, talking about the future, and for a moment, the ghost of Sophie was gone. Then, the waiter brought the wine. He mentioned it was from a specific vineyard in Bordeaux. Clara's face went pale. Her eyes darkened. I knew that look. I felt my stomach drop. "Bordeaux," she whispered. "Didn't you tell me once that Sophie's parents had a house near there? Is that why you chose this wine, Mark? To toast to her?" "Clara, no, I didn't even remember that. I just liked the description of the grape. Don't lie to me, she hissed, loud enough for the neighboring table to turn. You're obsessed with her. Every choice you make is a secret tribute to that woman. I can't live like this. I can't live with a man who is only half present. She stood up and walked out of the restaurant, leaving me with the bill and a half-full bottle of wine that tasted like ash. I sat there, staring at the empty chair across from me. I realized then that I was being driven insane. I was being accused of a crime I hadn't committed so many times that I was starting to lose my grip on reality. I was tired of being the bad guy for being a loyal husband. I went home, but I didn't go inside. I sat in my car in the driveway, watching the light in our bedroom window. I knew that if I went in, there would be 6 hours of crying, accusations, and demands for honesty. I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking. I opened a search engine. For years, I had avoided looking for her out of respect for my marriage. But Clara had already destroyed the respect. She had already decided I was a traitor. I typed in, Sophie Miller. Within minutes, I found her. She was a landscape architect now. She lived 3 hours away. She looked older, different, but there was a kindness in her eyes that I hadn't seen in my own home for years. I didn't want to sleep with her. I didn't even want to date her. I just wanted to talk to someone who didn't view me as a monster. I wanted to talk to someone who knew the old Mark, the one who wasn't broken by a decade of paranoia. I sent her a simple message on a professional networking site. Hi Sophie. It's been a lifetime. I'm going through a very difficult time and I found myself thinking about our old friendship. I just needed to talk to someone who remembers me when I was happy. I hope you're doing well. I hit send. I felt a surge of adrenaline, a mixture of guilt and pure, rebellious relief. Clara had spent years accusing me of reaching out to Sophie. Now, finally, she was right. I didn't expect a reply quickly, or perhaps I didn't expect one at all. But 10 minutes later, my phone vibrated in the dark car. It was a message from Sophie. Mark, I can't believe it's you. I'm so sorry to hear you're struggling. I remember you as the person who always had it together. What happened? Reading those words felt like a cool cloth on a feverish forehead. The person who always had it together. That was the man I used to be before I became a permanent suspect in my own home. I didn't go inside that night. I drove to a 24-hour diner and we talked, not through voices, but through text. We talked for 4 hours. We didn't talk about romance. We talked about life, about her career, about my teaching. She told me about her partner and her 2 dogs. She was happy. She wasn't a rival or a threat. She was just a person from my past who remembered me with kindness. For the first time in years, I wasn't being interrogated. I wasn't being watched for tells or hidden meanings. I could just exist. When I finally walked into the house at 5 a.m., Clara was waiting in the living room. She was sitting on the sofa, the light of her phone illuminating her face, which was twisted with a mixture of terror and triumph. "Where were you?" she asked, her voice dangerously calm. "I called the police. I called the hospitals. Or did you just decide that your anniversary of your first date with Sophie was more important than coming home?" "It's not an anniversary, Clara," I said, and for the first time, I didn't feel the need to defend myself. I felt a cold, hard finality. "But you're right about one thing. I was with her, in a way." I handed her my phone. I didn't wait for her to find it. I showed her the messages. "You've spent years accusing me of this, Clara. You've spent every day of our marriage treating me like a man who was cheating on you with a memory. You made the present so miserable, so full of ghosts and accusations, that I finally went looking for the person you kept telling me I loved. And you know what I found? I found a friend. I found a human being who doesn't treat me like a criminal." Clara stared at the screen, her eyes widening. This was her worst nightmare, but I could see a strange sort of relief in her expression. She finally had her proof. Her paranoia had been vindicated, even if she had to burn our life down to make it true. "I knew it," she screamed, throwing the phone onto the sofa. "I knew you still cared. I knew you were waiting for a chance to talk to her." "No, Clara," I said, my voice rising for the first time. I wasn't waiting, I was pushed. You didn't find a secret, you created one. You spent 10 years digging a hole in our marriage, and then you acted surprised when I finally fell into it. I'm done. I can't live in a courtroom anymore. The separation was a storm of, I told you so's. Clara told everyone that she was right all along, that I had been emotionally cheating for years. She used the messages I sent that night as her ultimate evidence. Her ego was satisfied, even as her life fell apart. She chose being right over being loved. I moved out that week. I didn't run to Sophie. I didn't want a relationship with her. That part of my life was truly over. I just wanted to be alone. A few months later, I met Sophie for coffee in person. It was a strange, bittersweet meeting. We looked at each other and realized we were both different people now. The old Mark was gone, and so was the girl she used to be. We talked about Clara, and Sophie looked at me with genuine pity. She was jealous of a girl who doesn't exist anymore, Mark, Sophie said. She was fighting a ghost, and the ghost won because she kept feeding it. I'm single now. I live in a small apartment where the only ghosts are the ones in my history books. I've learned a hard lesson. Trust isn't just about not cheating. It's about giving your partner the space to have a past without making it a weapon in the present. Clara is still obsessed. I hear from friends that she still checks Sophie's social media daily, looking for clues that we're together. She's still investigating a crime that never happened, while I'm finally living in the present. I'm not a suspect anymore. I'm just a man who finally found some peace. In my history classes, I often tell my students that empires don't usually collapse because of a single, massive invasion. They collapse from the inside, weakened by a slow decay of trust and a frantic obsession with perceived threats. By the time the final blow comes, the structure was already hollow. My marriage didn't end at that restaurant in 2026. It had been turning to dust for a decade. It's been 18 months since the divorce was finalized. In the beginning, the silence of my new apartment was jarring. For years, my ears had been tuned to the frequency of an impending argument. I would walk into a room and instinctively wait for the question, the accusation, the, "Why are you looking at your phone?" But now, there is only the hum of the refrigerator and the scratching of my pen against paper. Clara didn't go quietly. Even after I moved out, she continued to treat our dead relationship like a historical archive that needed further cataloging. She sent emails, long, multi-page manifestos, detailing how my eventual meeting with Sophie proved she was a victim of a 10-year gaslighting campaign. She wasn't mourning a husband. She was celebrating a victory. She had finally caught me, even if she had to set the trap and push me into it herself. But the most haunting part of the aftermath wasn't Clara's anger, it was her persistence. A few months ago, I was at the local library, working on a curriculum update. I felt that familiar prickle on the back of my neck. I looked up, and there she was, 3 aisles away, pretending to browse the shelves. She wasn't there to talk. She was there to observe. She was looking for signs. Was I meeting someone? Was I wearing the shirt Sophie liked? Was I happy? It hit me then with a wave of profound sadness. Clara is still a prisoner. I walked out of the courtroom and into a new life, but she stayed behind to guard the ruins. She is still a detective on a cold case that never had a victim. I've seen Sophie exactly twice since that coffee meeting. We aren't dating. We aren't rekindling anything. The version of us that existed in 2012 is a different species than the people we are today. We are just 2 adults who share a set of memories and a mutual understanding of how quickly a life can be derailed by someone else's shadows. Sophie is getting married next spring to a man who builds custom sailboats. When she told me, I felt a genuine, uncomplicated surge of joy for her. I didn't feel a sting of jealousy. I didn't feel a sigh coming on. I just felt normal. I realized that Clara's greatest fear was that I was half present. But the irony is that her paranoia was the very thing that made me withdraw. By constantly demanding 100% of my soul, she made me want to hide it all away just to keep it safe. With Sophie, and now with the quiet life I lead, I am finally 100% here. I am present in the air I breathe, the books I read, and the lessons I teach. I've started dating again, very slowly. A woman named Elena. She's a fellow teacher, a biology instructor who understands that life is about evolution, about shedding what no longer serves you so you can grow. On our third date, I told her about my past. I told her about the decade of interrogations and the ghost of Sophie. I waited for the look. I waited for her to ask for my phone passcode or to question why I still had a specific brand of coffee in my pantry. Elena just listened. She took a sip of her wine and said, "It sounds like you were a very loyal man to stay that long in a storm. I'm glad you're in the sun now." And that was it. No follow-up questions. No cross-examination. Just a simple acknowledgement of my humanity. I almost cried right there at the table, not because of the trauma, but because of the sheer, beautiful simplicity of being trusted. I still keep my history books. I still teach my students that the past is a teacher, not a prison. But now, when I look back at the years with Clara, I don't see a crime scene. I see a man who tried his best to love someone who was too afraid of the past to live in the present. Clara is still out there, somewhere, scrolling through social media, looking for a ghost. She'll find what she's looking for, eventually. People like Clara always do, because if you look at a blank wall long enough, your mind will start to draw the monsters for you. As for me, I've stopped looking back. The past is a closed book, and for the first time in my life, the current chapter is the only one I'm interested in reading. I am Mark. I am a teacher, and I am finally, peacefully, alone, until I choose not to be. Wow, that was something, wasn't it? I really hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I'm still processing some parts, so let's talk about it in the comments. I'll be down there waiting for your thoughts. Don't forget to like and share if you had a good time with me. See you in the next one.